babies and nothing but I think all adulthood is just tall grade school. But again, Bloom, I cannot tell you right now because we are live. We are actually going live right now. Everybody has waited for this. Everybody is ready to go. It is the preseason watch list. Are you ready, my friend? Okay. Bow to your sensei. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Well, did the Bears get a franchise quarterback or not? We know that Andy Dalton and Justin Fields are going to compete for that starting job. And as we go through the preseason watch list for 2021, Sigmund, we start with Chicago, and we start with a player that the Bears are hoping can finally be the franchise quarterback they've never had, in Justin Fields. Let's break this one down, brother.
Yeah, let's start, of course, with a few big picture housekeeping things to get out of the way. This will be the pattern this year. Continuity, coaching-wise. Some changes on the offensive line. Probably can't get Tevin Jenkins is probably going to start at left tackle, right? Elijah Wilkinson, you know that dude, Cecil. I think he's
Love Eli.
Right tackle. Yeah. So offensive tackle, interior line is good. What we wonder is, will this offense come alive? Because it has been saddled with Mitchell Trubisky, and how does it respond? But will it get Justin Fields right away? So there's the variable of how good can Fields be as a rookie, which in some ways can answer the question of will he get to start. Although I think we all agree that when it comes to this staff, we're going to bet the over on the number of games Andy Dalton gets to start, right? There's this question, and we'll talk about this with San Francisco too.
Right.
Will the coaches keep the starter out there if the team is winning in spite of the veteran starter? Who knows? But they do have a week 7, 8, 9 run, a murderer's row, if you will, of Tampa, San Francisco, and Pittsburgh. That feels like the end of the line for Andy Dalton in any scenario because week 10's a bye, and they can. So we get about half a season of Justin Fields probably. We don't really care about Andy Dalton for fantasy football. We do care about Justin Fields. We care a lot about Justin Fields. Justin Fields, and again, we can kind of handle Fields and Lance together for fantasy football. Fields and Lance are both, just by the same token as Jalen Hurts last year, instant fantasy quarterback ones. Instant. Konami code. Rich Rebar, what's up, man? Now, fantasy football, the hive mind's catching up, right? It was Lamar Jackson 2 years ago, but you got him like in the 11th, 10th, 15th round, whatever. So everyone's looking for the Lamar Jackson last year. It was Kyler Murray, who was going in the 5th round. So everyone was ahead of the curve.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that it was the wrong move to take Murray, right? He was rolling for like the first 10 weeks of the year. He was fine even at the end of the year after having that shoulder injury. So everyone's adjusted. Fields and Lance might cost you a 10th, 11th, 12th round pick. But again, once they get on the field, they're going to produce like a quarterback one. So you keep that in mind with your build. Certainly if you don't take a quarterback in the first half of your draft, taking Fields and then a few other darts. I don't know, Trevor Lawrence, another rookie, or take Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's a perfectly fine strategy at quarterback this year, even though those top quarterbacks are going to score very well. But I think what really nudges you between Fields and Lance Cease, and what really nudges you towards Fields or this offense in general is Matt Nagy actually a pretty good offensive coach? Because we saw it in Trubisky's first year. Remember, they ran up the score on Tampa. They ran up the score on a few teams. Everything was working. Everything looked. Tariq Cohen looked great. Everything was working. And could that come back with a non-Mitchell Trubisky quarterback? Even with Andy Dalton, could we see an improvement in this offense? That's the question that really this offense is going to revolve around. And, of course, the futures of Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy.
And that's what ties into the Fields conversation, because you're on the hot seat in the front office and the head coaching position. Are you really going to put the rookie in? And you said it, we'll get to it with San Francisco, because now the reports today are like, Kyle Shanahan says there's no open competition. There's always a competition. Yeah. So, Bloom, as we begin the preseason watch list with Chicago, I just want to advise everybody, don't take what coaches say at face value, because at the end of the day, might not mean much.
And he said right now, there's no open competition right now. We're turning this into a San Francisco episode. Last thing I'll say is Nick Foles is still on this roster, and maybe he'll get traded to somebody when they need a quarterback. That's about the only thing I have useful to say about him.
Yeah, let's talk about David Montgomery as we move to the running back position, and a player that people are constantly looking for someone else to take reps away, whether that's Tariq the Freak Cohen back, kind of Bloom. We'll jump into that. So this Montgomery talk actually becomes Cohen talk and Damian Williams talk as well. Do not get me started on Khalil Herbert just yet, Bloom. But let's really flesh out David Montgomery from a fantasy perspective. We saw what he could do. They may even ask him to do a little bit more as a receiver this year, but there is Tariq Cohen. There's the Damian Williams truther in your league that's like, I know he could play, and we'll take him with the very last pick. Yeah. But David Montgomery could just get more than some people think.
Yes. You are looking at David Montgomery maybe a little bit before, but in the roughly the same range of your fantasy draft as guys like Myles Gaskin, Mike Davis, Darrell Henderson, Javonte Williams, the guys with the big question marks. Is David Montgomery a big question mark? Well, coming into last year, he was. He hadn't really made good on the draft capital or the excitement about him in that backfield. And then even for the first half of the year, and again, some of this is the offense. So this affects David Montgomery. What if with Justin Fields and the stress that puts on defenses, that alone elevates this offense so that David Montgomery is going to be a good investment at, say, a 4th-round pick. But you also have that this offensive line really came together as a run-blocking unit in the second half of the year last year. Now, we can look at the schedule. You can look at the schedule and you can say, yeah, but who was it against, Who was he racking up these points against? Well, it was Detroit and Houston and Minnesota, Jacksonville. What's funny, just as an aside, Cease, not to turn this into, again, another team's episode, nobody says that about Jonathan Taylor. Who were the teams that Jonathan Taylor was racking up? Go ahead.
It's not recency bias, Bloom, but it's the bias on what people thought before these guys were drafted. Because Taylor's like, he's a first rounder, and Montgomery was like, well, does he have the juice? And Montgomery is one of those players that is very instinctive, very natural with what he does. He's not going to wow you with anything, but he's going to be steady with what he does. Yeah. And so that's what it was. That's why nobody says it about Taylor, and a lot of people will say it about Montgomery.
We're looking for reasons to doubt him.
Yes.
Again, doubting him was rewarded. If you were a David Montgomery doubter when he came into the league, you avoided some landmines. So it's okay to be attached to that. I was a David Montgomery doubter. Now the new one is, well, Tariq Cohen's going to be back. Starting camp on the PUP. We'll see how he looks. And Damian Williams, who's good in the red zone, and Matt Nagy. I don't think they were actually together at Kansas City at all, but there's a connection there in terms of offensive concepts and things like that. But maybe we are underselling David Montgomery. And maybe he's more of a known quantity than we think, especially if we think this offense is going to be elevated. So I think he is a little underrated at this point. Maybe he's not really that different than a lot of running backs going ahead of him, coming off of the success that he has and playing on a team that probably is going to be conservative on offense and really stress that running game.
Really stress that ground game, and we'll see what these guys do on said ground, especially when a young quarterback takes over. And Bloom, Fields not a rushing quarterback, but how many times have we seen it? Let's go back to Vince Young and Chris Johnson, right? When a younger quarterback who may not be as developed as a passer as he could be starts running, people see that as a negative, and maybe it is Cam Newton in the red zone. But it also could be a very good positive, as now you have actual 11-on-11 football. Fields doesn't pull it down and run maybe as much as he could or should, but that's something to note here as well when considering Bears running backs.
Yeah, and it may take away checkdowns. I think that maybe the biggest negative for running backs is those easy PPR plus points on checkdowns. But still, the threat of Fields is going to open things up in the running game. I think it's going to keep, at the very least, you have to have someone spying him or somebody who's devoting attention to him. And then, of course, we can start talking about how this is going to affect the wide receivers, because we're not really interested in Tariq Cohen. We're not really interested in Damian Williams, at least in redraft leagues. Khalil Herbert's interesting. We always watch with these late round guys. Will he make the team? If he makes the team, that's certainly interesting because it means he's good enough for a roster spot, even though they don't really need him this year. So that's certainly somebody, your preseason DFS, preseason watch list. He's right in the strike zone. But I think that, again, Cease, every position we're going to talk about, except for maybe tight end, we always are going to say, what do you think about this offense? What do you think about Justin Fields as a quarterback? Because that is then going to affect how you value these other players.
It is the preseason watch list here on the Audible. Cecil, Lammey, and Sigmund Bloom. It's 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show, Bloom. Is it now my time to talk about Khalil Herbert? Can I please do that? I love him. I absolutely love him. I hate when we went to the Bears. Okay. Full disclosure. Khalil Herbert can play. This guy is one of those players who you may have to wait around until he gets another opportunity with a different team. But if you want to talk about being able to create your own space in multiple ways, usually with moves, but understanding angles of pursuit, knowing how to naturally and instinctively cut through the defense, inside out runner, which, regular listeners to the show and new listeners, welcome. We're seeing a lot of new listeners as well. Know that I always talk about creating your own space and being an inside out runner. Herbert is that. Not only impressive at the Senior Bowl, but on film, even if you go back to his Kansas days, it wasn't Puka, it was Khalil Herbert was the man. Ryan Nall, the Wrecking Nall, still around, right? Still doing his thing, kind of same as he always has been. Artavis Pierce is there, and CJ Marable as well. If I mispronounce it, Bloom, well, it's the first show. I'm going to mispronounce more.
Yeah, and Herbert, again, is the interesting guy here that we're watching for our deep dynasty leagues. Good vision, good processor, maybe a 2-down back, and I think somebody who can stick around, but maybe the kind of running back that ends up getting replaced. You mentioned Marable. He's more of a passing down back. The Wrecking Nall, who can continue to hang around. He can perform more than one role. He can be a fullback. He can be a tailback. Pierce, Nall's former teammate, is still there. But I think what we're looking at here as the main storyline is, does Herbert show them enough that they want to use a 53-man roster spot on him?
Or does he ship off to the practice squad, which if I'm a team out there, if I'm a pro scout, and I've made it well known, Bloom, that when Peyton Manning buys a team, I will ask him for a job. I'm stealing Khalil Herbert.
Yoink.
Yeah, exactly. So do it at your own risk, Chicago. And there's that. It is the Audible. And before we get to the wide receivers, I have to tell you about our FBG mobile app. Be sure to download the Footballguys mobile app today. If you haven't already, it can be used on all smartphones and gives you all the same tools that you'd find on our website, newly redesigned website as well at footballguys.com. Also, our Draft Dominator app will make sure that you have an edge above your teammates by customizing the advice specific to your team. Download today so Football Guys can help you win. Worry less, win more. Sounds about right. Footballguys.com. Wide receivers are a changing. Now we'll get to exactly what happened with one Anthony Miller. But before then, of course, Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson there to be the man again for at least a little bit longer, Bloom. When will they ever properly respect Allen Robinson?
Probably not this year. Maybe somewhere else next year. I think, again, from a fantasy perspective, the fate of the quarterback battle and the fate of the wide receivers are somewhat intertwined. If it's Andy Dalton for more than half of the year, that's good for Robinson. We all remember what Andy Dalton did with A.J. Green, right? If you're a quarterback of limited ability to produce on your own, well, you want to get the ball to your playmakers. You want to get to the ball to the guys that make you look good. And Allen Robinson will make you look good. I think Allen Robinson could catch 120, 125 balls if Andy Dalton was the quarterback all year. Is that going to happen? I think everybody says no. There's no scenario. There's really no scenario where Andy Dalton is going to hold off Justin Fields, unless Andy Dalton has this amazing resurgence like Case Keenum with Minnesota or something like that, So then you look at Robinson maybe being hurt by the lack of passing targets. Because when Justin Fields comes in, the volume's going down. There's just no way around it. It'll go down significantly. It should change how we project this offense week to week. So then you start to look at where Allen Robinson is going in your fantasy drafts. Well, you're choosing him around the same time as players like Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb. I'd rather take the guy where the things that are happening on his team are converging with his value. Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing deep to Terry McLaurin or Taylor Heineke. CeeDee Lamb maybe becoming the wide receiver one in this incredible offense. So Allen Robinson probably not on your target list, but maybe could help this team be a winning team, get back to the playoffs, get himself a good payday somewhere next year, and get some of the respect that he has earned.
And let's talk about the respect for the guys behind him, as our guy Hectic Eclectic says in the chat room, all in for the Fields bombs to Mooney. And of course, Darnell Mooney heads up that next group with that speed. Hey, here's Demir Bird. More speed. Blue, Marquise Goodwin. More speed. Guess what we have behind Robinson? Speed.
Yeah.
So let's start with those Mooney, Bird, and Goodwin before we get to the other guys you may need to know.
And I like that you laid it out that way, Cecil. You anticipated exactly where I would go with this because it's a statement of purpose. Now that we have Justin Fields, we can stretch the defense. Justin Fields' deep accuracy is eerie sometimes. Mm-hmm. His deep ball is wonderful. And when you have that speed now, Goodwin, Bird, and most importantly, Mooney, now you add that to your game planning. And defenses have to add that to their preparation. You got to love Mooney. Mooney should be absolutely on your priority list. He's going off the board. You know, I mean, to be fair, reserve like a 10th or 11th round pick for him. There's a part of your draft where you're looking at guys like Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, maybe if you're still holding a prayer candle like me, McCole Hardman. Upside, your 5th receiver. Who cares if he doesn't hit? You're looking for upside. That's Darnell Mooney. They love him. And I think he's obviously going to be the prime target on those play action deep shots from Justin Fields. And it's exciting. I think Bears fans should be excited. See, can we just take a moment out there? Lots of long-suffering Bears fans out there. Usually Bears fans are Bears fans for life. You're born into it. For the first time since, Jim McMahon? I mean, I guess they were allowed to get excited about Mitchell Trubisky for a little bit. But, there's excitement, genuine excitement about their quarterback, and that should create excitement about Darnell Mooney.
Well, you know what's going to happen with Mooney, Bloom, is if Dalton begins the season, they're not going to connect on those deep shots because Dalton's passes are going to flutter and people will drop him. So savvy fantasy GMs, be ready. If you, oh man, I just missed out on Darnell Mooney. I wanted him as my 5th, 6th receiver, as you said. Yeah, somebody will drop him if Dalton wins the job, and you can scoop and score when Fields takes over. Let's get to the rest of the guys on the depth chart for Chicago, and that includes Javon Wims, Riley Ridley, Daz Newsome. He's on the pup, though. All right, let's talk about these guys. Chris Lacey there, too. Anyone else stand out you want to bring up here, Bloom?
Pitt product, Jester Weah. No, I think that Daz Newsome's the guy that you just file away for preseason watch list purposes. He had a broken collarbone he suffered in the spring. They traded away Anthony Miller, though, who was a real pain for them, even though he can play. They actually got Houston's 5th round pick. It was a swap of the 7th for a 5th. Whatever. They got Houston's 5th round pick for Anthony Miller. That's not bad. I mean, even though they spent a 2nd round pick on Miller. But Daz Newsome can absolutely step into the slot. Maybe not be fantasy relevant, but in your deep dynasty leagues, you're watching him, and he's a player. I think a lot of people like Daz Newsome a lot, Cease. I think a lot of people had him projected as someone that's going to stick in the pros. Maybe he's a 4th, 5th receiver. He's going to stick in the pros. Now with Anthony Miller traded, I think the Bears believe that too.
All right. It is the preseason watch list. Bloom, we get a preseason this year.
Yeah.
We still did the shows last year, of course, but it's like, hey, preseason watch list for nothing. Yeah. You get a preseason, and when he gets out there, watch for Daz. Let's talk about the tight end position. Cole Kmet, Jimmy Graham for now, because they just got Jesse James. So it's kind of clustered all together. We'll talk about Kmet and emerging and why tight end, whatever. But the Jesse James addition has people thinking maybe Jimmy Graham isn't long for the Windy City.
Maybe. But couldn't they have released him a long time ago? I mean, couldn't they have released him instead of Charles
and
Leno?
Saved a bunch of money? I wrote it up when James got signed for our newswire at footballguys.com. Like, let's save a bunch of money. And they're just like, nah.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't really understand why Jimmy Graham is still on the roster when you look at what he can contribute versus what he costs. But the Bears may see that differently. We know how much they love tight ends. Cole Kmet is a player that, to me, he's in that same category as guys like Austin Hooper, where in the right situation, if everything converges around him, he can have fantasy value because he's at least a competent player. I don't know if he adds value to his targets. So if Jimmy Graham is there, I'm not interested in Kmet at all. Not even like to have him for week 1 to see what happens. Because again, I think this is going to be a low volume pass offense that's going to trend to be an even lower volume pass offense once Fields takes over. If Graham is released, then Kmet becomes a little more interesting, but not a lot more interesting because again, we're looking at Robinson, Mooney, Montgomery. These are the primaries here. And we'll see what the Bears can do with new hope. But, unfortunately, as we learned, part of that hope is not going to be avoiding Aaron Rodgers.
Hey, Jake Butt's still there too.
Yeah.
All right. That is a wrap. Bloom, it feels good. We're cracking it.
Oh.
Like, if you're watching on YouTube, you're going to get
Right.
all of the NFC North. If you're listening on Apple Music or Spotify, well, we're going to slice these up into 32 episodes. So it's great to be back, though, with you, buddy, talking a little preseason watch list, huh?
It's fun to take this whirl around the league. And if you are listening to the show and you think, I would have loved to have been there live on YouTube and watched the whole division with outtakes and everything, there'll be more, folks. It's preseason watch list. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. I think they tell you if you subscribe, right? We're about to go on the air and you can experience it live.
If you hit the notification bell and jump through the million hoops that YouTube and our YouTube overlords want and love. But it is the Audible, the preseason watch list, 32 teams, 32 episodes, every skill position player that you want to know about. And DeAndre Swift is going to get a massive workload, or is he? That's next. We should have intermission music. You know what I mean?
Let's all go to, I think I do the lobby. Let's all go to the
lobby.
Favorite movie snack? Favorite thing from the concession
stances? I'm a Milk Duds guy. I went to see
Milk Duds are good.
I went to see Black Widow with my buddy Davin and got Milk Duds and then a large popcorn and like a bottle of water.
Milk Duds in the popcorn? Like in the melty?
No. Milk Duds for the trailer, popcorn for the movie.
Ah.
And
watch
then
out that dental work, though.
Peloton for the way home.
Yeah, exactly. Right, to burn it all off. One of these times I'm going to bite into a Milk Dud and like one of my teeth is just going to stay in it.
Yeah. And I would share my Peloton name with you, but I don't want to be embarrassed by how little I do.
Ours has been, well, see, we're going to lose our Peloton.
No. Peloton's awesome. It's the greatest thing ever. The tread's better than the bike. Anyway. All right. 3, 2, 1. Jared Goff is the quarterback for the Lions now. Why that means they're going to run the ball all the time today. It is the Lions on the preseason watch list here on the Audible. 32 teams, 32 episodes, every skill position player that you want to know about. And Bloom, it is Jared Goff. But how limited will Jared Goff be in what he does for the Lions this year?
Totally new offense here, right? New quarterback, Jared Goff. New offensive coordinator, Anthony
New
Lynn.
attitude. Right?
Yeah, got a new attitude. The Pointer Sisters.
Patty LaBelle? No?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm sorry. But both excellent acts that you should check out for your 70s, 80s R&B chops, you know. What's this offense going to look like? And again, we can look back to Anthony Lynn. It's great. Anthony Lynn's I'm not just running backs and run the ball. You look at my history. I can do different things. Well, this team might not have a choice, right? There's what you want to be, and then there's what game scripts dictate. And I think because of Detroit's defense, Matt Patricia really left them in bad shape. They're going to be passing a lot. How will Jared Goff do? I mean, certainly he can create fantasy value, especially with volume. One of the things this offense has going for it, Cecil, if you want me to tell you a happy story about this offense, it revolves around the offensive line. Probably more the running game than the passing game, but maybe both. You got Frank Ragnow, center, top 5 in the league. Yeah. You know, Taylor Decker, left tackle. I mean, there's a lot of good tackles out there. Definitely one of the tackles you're happy. Like, you're set. You got Taylor Decker, you're set. And now Penei Sewell, right tackle. And, by the way, Halapulivati Vaitai. I always have to stop and think before I say that one.
Very good.
They're going to shift him inside to guard, so he can be a road grader. So the offensive line can be a plus for this team. So you start there. But then there's not a lot of talent in the passing game around Jared Goff. They can establish the run, but they might not be able to really rely on the run and rely on a conservative ball control offense because their defense won't let them do it. And then, of course, in the background here, Cease, is a really big story about Goff, right? Because the Lions basically got a first-round pick to take Goff's contract.
Yeah.
But he could still turn into an asset. And he's not terrible. If he just plays at that Andy Dalton line, then he can become a tradable asset. Or he can become their quarterback of the present in the future, even at the rate that they're paying him. So there's a lot on the line for Goff. For the Lions, this is kind of a hit the reset button. We'll see what is worth keeping and what we're building around. But for fantasy, I think because of the offensive line, I think we can trust Jared Goff to make TJ Hawkinson's value grow. I think we can probably trust him to make one fantasy receiver a week. Now, that might change week to week. but somebody else, because of volume, because we're going to see him throwing in the 40s a lot, especially in PPR leagues. It might not be a smashing success story in terms of wins, losses, but Goff might clear his name a little bit after Sean McVay was done with him.
Done. And we all know it's all about him and Goff and sink or swim and see what you can do. Tim Boyle is there.
Yeah.
You know, we've got plenty to talk about Green Bay. Good timing on the Green Bay episode, right, Bloom? Good thing we didn't do this, a week ago or even over the weekend. Aaron Rodgers, he's a complicated fellow. We'll get to Green Bay in a little bit, but David Blau there behind him, and Tim Boyle. It's preseason watch list. I'll be watching Boyle. He's an interesting prospect to me.
Yeah, at least he doesn't have to look over his shoulder at John Walford anymore.
Okay, let's move on. DeAndre Swift. I teased it in the open Bloom industry term about DeAndre Swift's massive role. We know the talent is massive. We know the opportunity in this new offense and new attitude and run the ball and run it down your throat, beat them up, be physical. Yeah. That's all great. Then Anthony Lynn calls Jamal Williams an A-back. So it's largely a DeAndre Swift conversation, as it should be, Bloom. Fantasy GM should be really excited about Swift and that potential this year. But then Jamal Williams, who we all know, friend of the show, he's no slouch as well. He's no slappy.
Right.
He could be a starter somewhere. He didn't get a starting opportunity, but it seems like the Lions may be a little bit more RBBC. How are you best navigating the Swift situation?
Lynn is basically telling us that, right? This is going to be a running back by committee. I think their roles are going to be interchangeable. Now, I do still think that merit will determine who gets the 60% side, and that's Swift. But this is a 60-40 in a best-case scenario for Swift, like a 65-35 situation. Now, in PPR leagues, Swift is a good receiver. He could still be a par as a third-round pick. But does the spread, it's like third round for Swift, 12th round for Williams. Does that reflect reality? I don't think so. I don't think. And the other thing is you're looking at ADP peers. So, okay, Swift. Am I going to really take Swift over, I don't know, Chris Carson? No. Am I going to take Swift over even someone like J.K. Dobbins, who is set up in a better running game? No. Is it clear that Swift is even a better fantasy back this year than David Montgomery, who's probably going around later, or at least behind him? No. So I'm probably staying away from Swift. He could grow. He could do better. Jamal Williams has more best ball value than lineup setter value because he's going to constantly be in that like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 point range. Save your bacon in a best ball league. It would take Swift getting hurt for him to matter. So this is, again, a player who doesn't necessarily create a lot of fantasy relevance on his own outside of best ball leagues, but he can't hurt the value of a very key player in this offense. Swift's going to show us what he can do, and Swift can certainly take control of this conversation by just being excellent. I don't know if Swift is really going to blow us away. The offensive line can help him do that. And again, there's just a question of the second half of games. Both of them are good in the passing game. Williams may be a little more experienced and may have an edge for that role.
Yeah, how much does this team flounder?
Right.
You know, because that's what you think when you think about, all right, I think about David Montgomery and that Nagy offense, which we just talked about. With Fields, it's more exciting, but you think, would they flounder or will they keep trying something? With this offense, you're just like, okay, well, is there going to be a time where it's just 3 yards in a cloud of dust and nothing else? That's what you're wondering. You're also wondering behind, it's a segue, Swift and Williams, there's Jamar Jefferson, there's Dedrick Mills, Michael Warren still kicking around in the league as well. So some interesting names, Bloom. It is preseason watch list after all, so we talk about them all.
Yeah, and Jefferson's a guy here, late round pick who became a lot more interesting whenever they released Kerryon Johnson. So now he has the inside track for that number 3 role. Certainly a player who had his champions in the draft community, and we're going to see him in the preseason. We're going to see what he has to offer long term. Just like to see a team that's going to rely on the running backs a lot. We could see Jefferson get a decent amount of work this year if one of these two guys gets hurt.
It is the Audible. It's the preseason watch list. 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to talk about. And sometimes I crack myself up because I have to tell you before we get to wide receivers, well, are they really wide receivers? Anyway, we'll make fun of the Lions receivers in just a second. But before we do, check out footballguys.com. You love the show. You want to support the show. I hear it all the time. Thank you guys for listening. We really, really appreciate you. Bloom, I was at Shine Frontier Days. I had an Audible listener come up to me. When's the preseason watch list going to start? I was like, let me have some cold pops here at Garth Brooks, lose my mind, and then we'll get back at it. And so we are at it. So thank you guys for listening. Thanks for saying hi, following along on Twitter, all those great things. But if you love the show, you want to support the show, the best way to do that, go to footballguys.com. New, revamped, rejuvenated, updated website, and we hope you love it. Check out that Join Now button, the orange button in the top right-hand corner, and subscribe to footballguys.com. It's the best way to show your love for the Audible as we love you in return. Bloom, I don't love these Lions receivers. I'm hot with the transitions, but Terrell Williams, Rashad Perriman, Quintus Cephas.
Right. Exactly.
Wake me up when we're done with these guys.
Yeah, let's just handle this all in one take, okay? If you're going to take anybody, really, we don't need to belabor the Lions wide receivers.
Why is the Lions episode only 10 minutes long? Yeah,
exactly.
It's the receivers.
It's
they
the
suck.
Lions.
Yeah.
It's the Lions. You ain't lying. But don't. Okay, if you're going to take somebody late, take Tyrell Williams. Take Tyrell Williams because he looked like the number one in the spring. Anthony Lynn knows his game well. He can be a big play receiver. Before his foot issues came on, I think he had touchdowns the first 3 or 4 games of his Raiders career before that whole signing went south. So there's potentially something there. And look, Tyrell Williams isn't over the hill either. You know, pop quizzies. How old is Tyrell Williams?
29.
Yeah, 29. So
okay.
And he turned 29 in February. So he's not over the. We're not talking about like some retread. And Brashad Perriman's not a retread either, but he's just too.
But doesn't he seem like he's like 35? You know what I mean?
Well, in terms of the amount of consternation and worry about will Perriman ever deliver, and then every now and then he'll do something to keep us strung along. Then there's Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's probably going to be the slot receiver, but just doesn't add a lot of value to his targets. He may lead the team in catches. He may have some games where in futile comeback attempts in the second half, he racks up a lot of catches. We can look at Cooper Kupp, right? So we're looking at Jared Goff, and we're thinking about Jared Goff's not going to be someone that's striking downfield a lot. That's why it's not really good for Perriman, to be honest. But it is good for St. Brown. Maybe not enough to be fantasy relevant. It's good enough for Tyrell Williams. Remember, he can take those crossing routes. He can turn those into big gainers. And Williams is the best player in this group. Quintez Cephas had a chance to show something. Didn't really show much last year. See, there's all kinds of names here. Victor Bolden.
Geronimo Allison has had chances where,
Chad
you
Hansen.
think Alan Lazard type player. My
Right.
man Khalif Raymond.
Khalif Raymond, the deep threat.
Opportunities, and then he'll like drop easy passes. So I love Khalif, but man, and he's so quick. He's such a playmaker. He just can't catch.
Right.
So yeah, lots of names.
Well, and in a kind of, Hard Knocks way, this is some interesting TV because really any of these guys can win a roster spot. There's roster spots up for grabs at wide receiver. That's not where you want to be, though, if you're the Lions. It's not where you want to be if you're a fantasy GM looking for someone who could hit.
Someone who can hit for your fantasy team is the tight end, TJ Hawkinson. The tight end takes are very interesting. Mm-hmm. I don't necessarily subscribe to fantasy Twitter, Bloom. I don't, here's my old man, get off my lawn, like get off social networking type of rant. But I have seen in the brief moments, usually sitting on the throne, going through Twitter, like there's lots of interesting opinions on TJ Hawkinson, overrated. Blah, blah. All I know is this: with Jared Goff, security blanket, baby. He's Linus with the blanket. There's your Peanuts reference, and that's TJ Hawkinson. That's his blanket. We just went through the wide receivers who can't really play or stay healthy if they can play, like Rashad Perriman. Who can play? TJ Hawkinson. So is the fantasy community, the hive mind of Twitter, just kind of wrong about Hawkinson's potential this year?
He's got a lot of potential for fantasy. And the reason he has a lot of potential for fantasy is December 2019 Tyler Higbee. Remember that? When Tyler Higbee was the number one fantasy tight end at the most important part of the fantasy calendar. Now, some of that was Gerald Everett got hurt. Okay. But the point is that Jared Goff, when the bullets are flying, may rely on that big target in the middle of the field that is the easiest, the lowest degree of difficulty throw, So if Hawkinson catches over 100 balls this year and is a success in PPR leagues and a success especially in your tight end premium leagues, we should have seen it coming. Now, on the other side of that, Hawkinson has had plenty of opportunities to overachieve. Now, it's funny because this is all going to tie into Kyle Pitts. Where am I going with this? Take Kyle Pitts ahead of Hawkinson. Okay? Let's cut to the chase. Spoiler alert.
Right.
But Hawkinson came in as the number 8 pick, I think. He got forced on the field early in his career. A ton of red zone targets. We could have been talking about him as the tight end that broke that rookie tight ends don't produce streak. if he had just converted his opportunities. There's always just a little bit out of his reach, or he just couldn't quite bring the ball in. Then he got banged up. Last year he was better, but he wasn't tilting your season. Again, he still can because of volume, but I think he's had ample opportunity in the first 2 years with a better quarterback to show that he's going to be a special player, that he's going to show everyone why he was worth that top 10 pick. I'm not saying he's been a failure, but I'm just saying we have had an opportunity to see that. He hasn't greatly overachieved. Maybe he overachieves for fantasy because Jared Goff is going to rely on him too much, just like he did with Tyler Higbee. But I don't think necessarily he's truly an ascendant player. The one thing he does have going with no one really behind him to take targets.
Maybe Darren Fells in the red zone? Maybe.
As a blocker. Certainly. Free him up to run some pass routes because Fells is a good blocker. And, I mean, I don't even know what else they have there. Alizé Mack?
Alizé. I was down for some Alizé. All right, that is a wrap for the Lions. Yeah, Bloom, it's about 11 minutes.
Yeah.
So, hey, sometimes these are about 20. Broncos will be 25.
It's a Bronco show.
Sometimes they're like 11 or some junk. But you're watching us on YouTube, you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music. Either way, we appreciate you and say thank you very much for watching. It is the preseason watch list. That means 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you can give a damn about. We talk about right here on this show. He's Sigmund Bloom. I'm Cecil Lammey. And hallelujah, they're getting the band back together. But why? Instead of being Led Zeppelin getting back together, they might be Wolf Mother. Talking Packers football next. Now I need the Mike Patton clip where he says, Wolf Mother, you suck. I never understood that, Bloom.
Yeah,
We're going to start a band and sound exactly like a band that is historically much better than us.
Yeah,
and everybody knows it.
It works. I mean, in some ways, being derivative works. There's all the people that would say, I think there's a documentary out there about Guns N' Roses, that really, like, if you really like Guns N' Roses, there were other bands that were doing what they were doing before they did it. I don't know.
Yeah. That scene was weird, though.
It was L.A.
L.A. Guns, because L.A. Guns and what was Axl's band, the Rose. That's how they got Guns N' Roses, because they split the two bands, and then L.A. Guns continued on. And
you know what we were watching, Cease? We were watching the Kiss. Even when they got Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley.
Wasn't Allen Robinson wearing a Kiss shirt today? Right?
I don't know. I didn't see that. So they were really willing to do anything to be stars. And the biggest band in New York City. You know what the biggest band in New York City was whenever they first came up? The New York Dolls.
Okay.
And they went glam. I mean, straight
Makes
up
sense.
Cross-dressing, gender bending, and the pictures of them as a gender bending band. It's pretty funny. I think they said
Kiss is
linebackers.
Kiss is pretty funny examination anyway. That's a different show.
Very
American. How many podcasts are we up to, by the way?
473.
Okay. All on this channel.
Yeah. Sign up for sponsorships.
WNBC. All right. Let's talk a little Packers. We will go on in 3, 2, 1. So Aaron Rodgers stays in Green Bay. Yay? Question mark. It's the Audible preseason watch list, 32 teams, 32 episodes. And Bloom, good thing we're doing this show today because Aaron Rodgers is staying in Green Bay.
Yeah,
hooray.
It sounds like Randall Cobb is coming back too. And that wasn't just a rumor. As we record, we're getting this. So yeah.
They were talking about that earlier. It wasn't like officially official, but yeah, Randall Cobb's coming back. Hence the getting back the band together. It's the last dance, right? Isn't that him and Devontae on Instagram? They did the last dance. That means one more try. And the concessions. It's not about money. It's about the people. It's about the concessions. But here's the thing. Like, really? You're going to handshake? You hate these guys and you're going to do a handshake agreement? You're really going to trade me next year, right? You're really going to let me pick where I want to go, right? Okay. I don't know. It's a different this preseason watch list. It's fantasy, but I spent 3 hours last night ranting about how this makes nobody wins in this Rodgers situation. Packers fans don't win. Broncos fans don't win. Rodgers doesn't look good in the what? I'm staying away. What? Huh? I can get Randall Cobb. I'm coming back. Nobody wins. The Packers front office looks awful. Anyway, different subject. Fantasy football. Let's go.
Yeah, and I think that maybe, if we're going to try to be way overly simplistic about this, maybe just as training camp was coming around, Aaron Rodgers, competitive guy, saw that the alternative was going to be retiring and forcing the Packers' hand and creating a lot of upheaval in his life. And he likes his teammates. He likes the opportunity to get together with them and try to make it happen again, the last dance. And as training camp was going to open, he just wanted to be back. He's a football player. Now, maybe a Jeopardy host. Who knows what other interests we'll see Aaron Rodgers have. But look, for fantasy, his ADP didn't drop that much while all of this cloud was over him, which I guess we should say kudos, bravo, Hive Mind. Hopefully you were getting in some best ball drafts, did some dynasty trades when you could take advantage of that uncertainty, because now it's certain that he's going to be back for this year. And then we'll see after that. Now, when you look at ADP, still, am I going to take Rodgers a round ahead of Tom Brady, 2 rounds ahead of Matthew Stafford? I don't know. I don't know if I think that's that great, because you look at Rodgers from efficiency standpoint, career year last year, right? As good as you could possibly expect him to play.
Yes.
Cobb being back could help. He lost their center, Corey Linsley. I don't know. There's not a lot of change here. David Bakhtiari's coming back from a knee injury.
Cobb coming back is weird, and I know we're skipping ahead, Bloom, but they have Amari Rodgers.
Right. I know. Awkward for Amari Rodgers. But still, you have a future with this team, a future that's probably one without Aaron Rodgers and without Randall Cobb eventually. So I'm probably not in on Rodgers. Obviously, we're going to talk about how his return now, like he never left, he didn't really, is going to boost the values of these players. Still some riddles to solve in this Green Bay offense. And it is anticlimactic. Yay, he's coming back. Staying together for the kids, I think is what they said.
Does that ever work? I don't want to get too deep or personal on this show, but I know from my family and my parents, exactly. It's like, I remember my dad being like, we stayed together until you turned 18. I was like, you shouldn't have. Sorry. You shouldn't have.
This is 474 coming from broken homes or things like that. That's a lot of listeners for that one.
This is on the couch, literally.
Always.
It all started, and I was at Frontier Days, Bloom, and I told the friends I was with, I was like, I've never ridden a carousel. Oh. It all started when my dad wouldn't let me ride it. You got plenty of horses at home. So there you go.
Wow.
Never ridden a carousel. I'd love to. I might be afraid of it. Anyway.
That's like the first panel in your origin story comic
book. Got some news on that. But how about news of Jordan Love? And it is preseason watch list. Rodgers is going to play what? A quarter in the preseason? Maybe, a half if you take all 3 games. Rodgers is going to be very limited. So Jordan Love is there. We need to see better from Jordan Love. And the talk was, very thorough and thick as the team message. They wanted to get it out there. We really like Jordan Love. He's looking really good. He's looking, I think, aggressive was one term used, Bloom. Correct me if I'm wrong. But what are we going to see from Jordan Love? Because he is the future, and the future will be next year for the Packers.
And this is the fun part of the preseason watch list, or at least watching the preseason, right? The one thing about Aaron Rodgers showing up is it deprives us of a Blake Bortles, Jordan Love battle. And just having to ponder, could Blake Bortles really start for this team? Could this really be happening? But Jordan Love, as I said, just finished up with Josh Norris on the couch. You feel for Jordan Love. He didn't ask for this. He didn't ask for all of this burden. That being said, you have to think it puts this immense amount of pressure on him, and obviously there are big shoes to fill, legacy and so on. But if he can handle this, he can really pull the sword from the stone and become the best version of Jordan Love that we could ever have imagined, or that he could have ever imagined. And if he wilts under it, well, what was he going to be anyway? So it puts him in a spot where everything is going to be scrutinized. There's a lot riding on it. Maybe he can rise to that occasion, a long way from Utah State.
It is the running back position, and it is Aaron Jones that we're going to talk about. But like almost every team, Bloom, whether we're going to talk DeAndre Swift, but we have to talk Jamal Williams. Well, we're going to talk Aaron Jones, and we have to talk A.J. Dillon.
Right.
How much is Dillon going to cut in? Is he more or less the same as Williams will cut into Swift? And Jones, obviously, very well-rounded. Doesn't need to come off the field, but the way Dillon played surprised some last year, and maybe he'll get a little more looks this year.
Yeah, I'm psyching myself out on this one, Cease. I'm overthinking this one.
You love Aaron Jones.
I do love Aaron Jones.
You love him. El Paso, what's up?
El Paso product, yes. However, moving him down to reflect whatever the probability was that Aaron Rodgers was going to retire or sit out for some or all the season, gave me an opening to start to really doubt whether he belongs in the first round of fantasy drafts. And again, you can start to, as soon as you get your first round pick slot, you can start to project who are the players that I'm going to be thinking about, right? Well, the top 5 running backs are basically set. McCaffrey, Cook, Kamara, Henry, Zeke, basically. Then you get to some diversity in terms of opinions. Saquon Barkley, talked about that on the couch. He's all over.
Najee Harris.
Najee Harris. Jonathan Taylor, Nick Chubb, Austin Eckler, Joe Mixon, Antonio Gibson even is getting into this late first, early second round mix. And it really tests your faith in these players. And I have a lot of faith in Aaron Jones' talent, and he's in a good offense. He's a good receiver. He's been good at scoring touchdowns. He's been good at breaking big plays. But I keep coming back to the fact that this team spent a second-round pick on A.J. Dillon. In Week 16 last year, A.J. Dillon had a tremendous game. Now, again, we're looking at the schedule. Who was it against? Oh, come on now. It was against Tennessee. It was against Tennessee that he had 21 carries for 24 and 2 touchdowns. But doesn't this feel like a situation where Gutekunst, LaFleur, they're going to show this is what we had in mind with Dillon. 1-2 punch, thunder and lightning. So I worry. I worry about whether Aaron Jones is going to get more than 15 to 18 touches a game, which he didn't often eclipse last year, to be honest. And I worry if A.J. Dillon is going to become, if not the automatic guy inside the 5, the guy inside the 5 enough that Aaron Jones now starts to look like bargain bin Austin Eckler, but not even getting the volume that Eckler gets in the passing game because for whatever reason they're reluctant. Now Randall Cobb is back. That materially affects Aaron Jones' outlook. Randall Cobb is now Aaron Rodgers' guy as an outlet as much as it would be Aaron Jones. So I love Aaron Jones, the player. I love the situation that he's in as far as the quality of the offense, but I can't get rid of the feeling that A.J. Dillon's coming.
And A.J. Dillon is coming to run your ass over, as IDPZ says in our chat room. Well, this is basically what you say when you see A.J. Dillon. If you listen, God help. That's right, Sir Smoke-A-Lot. We all need more Sir Smoke-A-Lot in our life. I need more Kylan Hill. This is my error, Bloom. I will make an admission on these airwaves right now. When I was at the Senior Bowl, I was like, I'm going to find out why he left. Like, why did that all fall apart? And it's not like Mike Leach is the greatest guy ever, whatever. And then the one person that could tell me, I'll tell you who it is off there, I didn't catch up with about that. I didn't talk to Kylan Hill about that. But I know from film that this kid has it all. He's got the instincts, the slashing style, runs with a little bit of power. I really enjoy his game. I really, really enjoy his game. But you wonder, and then of course he's buried. But it's preseason watch list, Bloom. This is what we do. So Aaron Jones, A.J. Dillon, how much they're going to play in the preseason, how much should they, whatever. I just want to see Kylan Hill because I know the guy can play. You're just going to, is Khalil Herbert all over again, although I like Herbert more. Herbert's more well-rounded, I think. But like Hill, Dexter Williams, Patrick Taylor on the pup list. Like
right.
We're just going to have to kind of wait for some of these guys, but we might get glimpses in the preseason.
Yeah, that number 3 running back battle. And Dillon, by the way, is going to cost you like a 9th, 10th, 11th round pick if Aaron Jones goes down. Maybe not league winner to the extent that Tony Pollard would be, but still a lot of injury upside there. And then if he's getting goal line carries, he could be your running back too. So Dillon is an attractive proposition. And then depending on injuries, like you said, there's Dexter Williams, 6th round pick, not really coming through. Kylan Hill, 7th round pick this year. See, if we're talking 2020 pre-season or 2019 postseason, Hill's a 3rd round pick, 4th round pick. As far as his scouting report, good in the passing game, and they want someone to be able to maybe do some passing down work. Hill, I think, is your favorite to win this job, and Hill is a guy, Cecil, that if we were every year. This is why you love the preseason watch list, folks, because we get into 3rd string, 4th string, 0th string running backs. 1 or 2 of those guys sway leagues by the end of the year. Kylan Hill would not surprise me at all, Cecil, if we're talking about him on the waiver wire show at some point this year.
Before we get to the wide receivers in Green Bay, and they are oh so happy, I want to tell you about our email sign up for footballguys.com. Listen, you have a life. We don't. Go about your business. Go about your day. Stay safe, everybody. But let us take care of the news as we do every day, whether it's me, Sigmund, Joe Bryant. We've got all the news for you in our free daily newsletter. You love the show. You say, hey, footballguys.com, I want to see more. Well, subscribe to our email sign up. It's free. It's every day. It's the top stories with our opinion on the fantasy twist, the lemon twist, the angles that you need to know, the information that you need to know, hot and fresh, as I like to say, to your inbox every single morning. It's our Football Guys daily newsletter. Sign up for it now for free at footballguys.com. Devontae Adams here's the whole Rodgers thing, Bloom. It's a much larger conversation we won't be able to get to, but it's like, I'm not going to stay. What? Rodgers coming back? I might stay.
I'm open to staying.
I'm open to staying. Contract year or no for Devontae Adams, whatever. He's over the moon. Fantasy GMs know what to do with this guy. And, well, let's get Devontae out of the way before we get to everybody else.
And we can really kind of group everybody else under everybody else.
Yeah.
Where the choice comes for Devontae Adams, there's a case now to take him ahead of Tyreek Hill as the first wide receiver off the board. And there's a case to take him anywhere in that late first round, early second round range if you like the idea of going wide receiver, running back, or maybe even wide receiver, Hill and Adams, depending on what you think of what you can get at running back later. I think you should get at least one running back in your first two picks if you're picking at the end of the first round, and then maybe Adams gives you that safe place to go to so you don't have to stick your neck out for Joe Mixon or Najee Harris or whoever it is. You know, don't like Nick Chubb's upside because of Kareem Hunt or something like that. So I think that's really where the rubber meets the road. Now we know exactly what Adams' outlook is, and he could even surpass last year. I think that whole Last Dance theme, you know, it's Rodgers and Adams, and when the bullets are flying, you know he's going to look for Adams, even though he does have a pretty deep group of players behind Adams to target.
Yeah, deep group and so many difference. It's like a buffet, right?
Right.
It's the golden corral of wide receivers, and it might actually be golden corral. We talk about Devin Funchess or whoever, but like some names that we've loved and we've talked about forever. Allen Lazard, huge red zone target. MVS, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, deep tracking those deep passes. Amari Rodgers, who's their Randall Cobb, version of Jabba Rookie. Well, Randall Cobb's there now, so It's kind of a pick your poison. We'll get to Robert Tonyan in a little bit, but all these receivers behind him, it's like, yeah, they've got some talent, but their individual skills, it's like a specialized group. Mm-hmm. Like, oh, we're red zone. We need our big guys out there. Oh, we're between the 20s. Let's get Rodgers and Cobb on the field at the same time. Like, that's why it's just kind of mix Olive Garden, free breadsticks. I don't know.
Sure. Salad bars. I don't know if those are a thing anymore. It's good for Rodgers. It's good for this offense. For fantasy, in typical lineup setting leagues, good luck week to week without injuries, clarifying this down to, say, 2 of this group of 4. Will we have any clarity? In best ball leagues, there could be some value here. Maybe not from Amari Rodgers. But Amari Rodgers, hey, it's still a good pick. He can give you that credible jet sweep action. He's got some speed out of the slot. He can be a vertical slot. He can do some things. He can do some things that Randall Cobb used to be able to do. In fact, you may have heard any number of draft analysts say this is kind of like when they took Randall Cobb, when they took Amari Rodgers.
And is Amari's, what was it, his dad was Amari's receivers coach, something like that? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm misplacing somebody's father somewhere, but yeah, there's a connection, a family connection between Cobb and Rodgers.
Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense, but not necessarily for fantasy this year. Cobb may be there, again, the last round best ball pick. It's going to make Rodgers better. It makes the case for taking Rodgers better. It's just whether Cobb can stay on the field. They got to restructure the contract. Lazard is coming on. See, we may still talk about Lazard as a long-term starter and a good all-around receiver. Allen Lazard at times doesn't look that different than, say, Michael Pittman, right? A big receiver. He's got some good body control. He plays with strength, but he can also be a route runner. But on this team, he's not going to get the opportunity to do that. Still only 25 years old. I think turning 26 during the season. So don't give up on Lazard long term. And then there's Valdes-Scantling. Do give up on Valdes-Scantling long term. What I mean by that is he's just too inconsistent. He's too inconsistent that he's ever going to be a cornerstone of a pass offense. But he plays the role he plays well, averaging like 20 yards a catch, that vertical element. And much like some of these guys that have come in the past, he's Ted Ginn, Devery Henderson, 50-50 is not bad if you can consistently get behind the defense. If you drop one for every one you catch, we can live with that in that specialized role. And I think that's what you're going to see from Valdez-Scantling this year.
It is preseason watch list, which means I got to talk about Juwan Winfrey.
Yeah.
I guess. Yeah. Hey, DeAndre Tompkins kicking around, but like Winfrey's always had talent. He just never stayed healthy. So poor man's Paul Richardson, Bloom, same school. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, and I think that what you see is a guy who sees the drum beat, right? He started a drum beat. It was a little drum beat, a little snare,
bit, yeah, a little
snare drum beat. You still got Equanimous St. Brown, now the second most likely St. Brown in the league.
When Equanimous St. Brown, remember they all skipped OTAs or whatever in support of Rodgers. When Equanimous did that, I was like, come on, dude.
Yeah,
like, seriously.
Look out for yourself. Actually, you need it. The size, speed, but he's never really converted on that. Devin Funchess is back, as you said. All these guys, again, there's another drama aside from fantasy football, or even really truly the football dramas for each of these guys this summer. They're playing for their careers. They're playing to become relevant in some way to their team and not become irrelevant. So that battle at the end of the depth chart, even though none of these guys may make the team, they may make another team, or at the very least they're trying to show they still have game, they're still in shape, they can still make it happen.
Celebrating Logan Thomas's contract, Bloom. If I'm a big guy, maybe not Lazard specifically, but how many more big guys? There's Funchess. We got Kelvin Benjamin, but I'm like, just go play tight end.
Yeah.
Let's go play tight end. If you're a big body
Jawan
guy like
Johnson, the latest down in, I think he's been working a little bit at tight end for New Orleans. Yeah.
And that's a little, spoiler alert. I love how we sprinkle in all these other teams when we're talking preseason.
It's all connected.
We're just super excited to get back and talk to everybody right here. So Robert Tonyan, excited to talk about him, and you want to talk about the largest benefit, because Devontae Adams is going to do his thing, right? Now, maybe it's not as good with Rodgers, obviously, if it's Jordan Love. But that connection that Tonyan had with Rodgers, the largest benefactor is Tonyan, because Rodgers is back.
I'd say that's fair, because Rodgers is going to look for Tonyan in the red zone. We know that. Tonyan's another guy who's created some positive buzz this offseason, so he might just be getting started. Jay Sternberger, sorry, man. I'll never forget when after his rookie year, that Jay Sternberger interview, I don't even know if Aaron wants me to be talking about this. So he might be mad to even know that I'm working really hard, and I really hope he just sees how hard I'm working. That was when and look, from a personal point of view, oh my, if I was ever in any kind of high pressure situation, I would be like that times 10.
That speaks to Sigmund Bloom.
Yeah, that speaks to me, but it's not the kind of stuff that NFL players that excel are made of. Robert Tonyan's Big Bob Tonyan. He's got it. Now, is Big Bob going to graduate to the Hawkinson Pitts tier, like the top 5? No. I don't think that happens in any event. Can he be more valuable than Mark Andrews? Sure. Can he be more valuable than Dallas Goedert, even if Zach Ertz finally gets released or traded or whatever? Sure. Because he gets the touchdowns. And see, so if you don't have one of the tight ends that you can count on week in, week out to be one of the anchors of your team, which you have to spend a pick in the first 5 rounds to get, then you're just hoping for a touchdown, basically. You're just hoping for your guy to not be a zonk. Tonyan was doing a really good job of that last year.
Mm-hmm. All right. That is a wrap for the Green Bay Packers as the preseason watch list rolls on. It is 32 teams, 32 episodes, and every skill position player that you want to know about, we talk about right here on this show. And we all know that we wrap up the NFC North with Minnesota. But the tease is this, Bloom. Would they be better with Kellen Mond? No, that's my joking tease. That's a joke. You said Kellen Mond would be better than Kirk Cousins. No, my tease is this. What does Justin Jefferson do for an encore? We'll tell you, and you'll love it next. Maybe you won't love it. I don't know.
It depends. Maybe you'll be slightly pleased by it. You watching the Olympics at all, Cecil? No, it's great though, man. The Olympics are great.
It's nothing against the athletes. I said this last night because this will be snipped out of the podcast. Sure. But if you're watching on YouTube, you're hearing this. I told Nick, I was like, dude, I don't want to talk about anything but football. Mm-hmm. So we send topics back and forth during the day, and he sends me an Olympics one, and I was like, I said on the air, we talked about it, but I said on the air, I was like, dude, this doesn't move the needle. This is like, and this is no disrespect to the athletes. This is no disrespect to the country and the pride and the tradition. And yeah, that's fine. I'm in football mode. So you ask me if I've been watching the Olympics.
I hear you. It's good decompression. I said
I do the old Jim Rome. Are the Olympics over yet?
I hear you. It is a very emotional outing. I admitted with Josh. We talked about it on the couch. I do cry when I watch it. Of course, tears of joy, tears of cathartic joy when I see some of the celebrations.
I cried when Luke Skywalker showed up at the end of Mando season 2. So,
yeah.
It's all about feeling.
Yeah, Luke represents that part of us that can overcome.
Hope.
So exactly,
Hope.
A New Hope.
It's called A New Hope for a reason. All right. Let's go Minnesota in 3, 2, 1. Are the Minnesota Vikings ever going to do anything, and why? Well, that doesn't really matter for your fantasy team as long as they keep putting up the points. It is the Vikings episode on the preseason watch list. 32 teams, 32 episodes. And Bloom, Kirk Cousins, rinse, repeat. We already know what he's going to do.
Yeah, we do. And he's not that interesting of a fantasy player to talk about because of that. He's good for matchups as your quarterback 1 if you have a late quarterback approach. He's a fine quarterback 2 in your 2 quarterback super flex leagues. Maybe the worry is that he might drop off a little if the defense gets better, because that forced him to a few more attempts. It was still a very low attempt pass offense. It will remain a very low attempt pass offense. Maybe Cease, this is a point for us to say, hey, Kirk Cousins has put together a pretty nice career. And he's not going to go down even in the hall of like Tony Romo level guys. But nobody was predicting that he was going to be this solid of a starter for this long. He provides a solid floor for the value of his pass catchers. Got to love that for fantasy football. He's meshed very well with the offense. That Shanahan, Kubiak, that whole part of the family tree of offenses very well. Hopefully the line gets better. They got Christian Darrisaw in the first round. They drafted Wyatt Davis. They have some players maybe that can solidify this offensive line, but this is a well-run team. But again, maybe the favorite if Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to play. Now, definitely playing second fiddle in this division.
Yeah, and it's Clint Kubiak running the show, taking over for Gary. I talked to Gary last week. So we know what it's going to be. And that's why the Kellen Mond thing got me excited, Bloom, because it was merely this. And watching Kellen Mond or down at the Senior Bowl or on film, and at the Senior Bowl, it wasn't that impressive. Like Mac Jones was the best quarterback there, and he was okay. Like I never bought in, and we talked about it on this show, but you knew behind the scenes the 49ers wanted Trey Lance. The whole Mac Jones thing, that was all made up folly. Like they really like Mac Jones. Really? A Shanahan system with Kellen Mond, though. As I watched Mond, it gave me a little bit of Dak Prescott vibes from the Senior Bowl, because the Broncos and Gary Kubiak really liked Dak Prescott. But then he got the Dewey. He missed his flight from Orlando where he was training to Denver. They, took Paxton Lynch, and the rest is history, even though they liked Prescott and he would have been perfect for that Kubiak system. But when I watch Kellen Mond, he looks like Colin Kaepernick in multiple ways in terms of, if you get him on the run, you give him a high-low read high, read low, run if it's not there. Mond can really do that. Well, Jake Plummer, Jay Cutler, Shanahan system, which we all know, do a bootleg. Mond can take off with his legs, and he can make that high road. Get him a Michael Crabtree. Get him that drag route guy, right? It's going to run 4 yards away down the line of scrimmage. Just kind of follow him on his bootleg. Dump it off or take a deep shot or run. Mond can really do that. So it's preseason watch list. Kirk Cousins,
Right.
Whatever, cool. But Kellen Mond is very interesting to me, and I wasn't blown away by him either in person or on tape, but in this system, I see how it could work.
And that's why in the preseason, what we want to watch is how smoothly does he run these plays? How much is this playbook in his first camp, his first preseason, gelling? It's just the first look, but I think, as you bring up, he presents a very interesting proposition for this offense. Cousins a free agent in 2023. That gives Mond a couple of years to ramp up. It's a highly structured system. The idea is that the play design, that the execution of the play makes the quarterback's job easier, which then means that you can enjoy some of the fruits of that athleticism, of that arm strength. Jake Plummer, Brian Greasy's another one I always think of, Cease. Even Chris Sims, even though it wasn't a Shanahan offense, the idea being if you make things bite-size, processing decision-wise, you can get more out of the natural talents a quarterback has. And Mond has a lot of natural talents, at least when it comes to physical tools.
I'll go to Bubby Brister, who used to mumble through plays. That's why they went to Greasy. Because it's not that Bubby got that okay, got that Louisiana, right? You get some of that down there in New Orleans, right? And they got that Louisiana way. But yeah, Bubby would like mumble rap his way through his plays in the huddle.
My stepbrother named his dog Bubby. Beloved around Pittsburgh.
Okay, yeah, Bubby. Bubby didn't throw the Super Bowl like Neil O'Donnell. Anyway, yeah, let's go to Dalvin Cook because this is easy.
Yeah,
it's like the Cousins things, but it is exciting because we love Dalvin Cook, Bloom, and here he is next up in the preseason watch list.
He's the number 2 pick in your draft. If you don't get McCaffrey, if you draw the number 2 pick, just take Dalvin Cook. And only because of McCaffrey and how he floats our boat in fantasy leagues, have we not fully embraced and understood how special it is to watch Dalvin Cook and get to benefit and team up with Dalvin Cook on our fantasy teams. Because what Dalvin Cook embodies, or what Dalvin Cook Minnesota Viking embodies in this offense, is one of the rare perfect alignments between talent, skill, and system, right? Dalvin Cook is going to be as good as he possibly can be in this system. You heard it a lot out of Minnesota, that this was going to be the system to really unlock his value. People doubted signing him to the long-term extension and things like that. But it makes sense because it's a beautiful marriage. And that's why you're taking him number 2. And we don't even think of him as injury prone anymore.
We just think of him as damn good.
Yeah.
That's me waiting to take Dalvin Cook, number 2. Like, go ahead. Go ahead and take C-Mac. That's fine. Love Christian, but give me some of that Dalvin Cook. Now, behind him, Alexander Mattison. If you haven't watched Hamilton, what the hell's wrong with you? Either way, Alexander Mattison, as I'm going to say it, just like Alexander Hamilton, but Mattison maybe hasn't been as quite as impressive, but there were times, Bloom, where you just rub your eyes, because they'll rotate him in and be like, was that, I thought it was Cook. A nice run there by Cook. Oh, wait, that was Mattison. I know I've said that for a couple of years, but it's been true for a couple of years. You're just waiting for another team, I guess.
Yeah, probably. And he's looked okay. There are times that he looks like 75, 80% of Cook, which is saying a lot.
Which is really good.
Yeah, but he meshes with his system well. But I think the times he has gotten opportunity when Cook hasn't been on the field, he hasn't popped in the way that future star does, even the way that, say, Tony Pollard does, or the way A.J. Dillon did in Week 16 last year. Before, it was Mike Boone behind him. Now Mike Boone's in Denver at the Broncos show. But see, on Alexander Hamilton, I'm always taken back to Grand Royal Magazine. I don't know if you remember Grand Royal Magazine. The Beastie Boys actually had a magazine. They would release an issue of it like maybe once a year. There was never any rhyme or reason to when an issue would come out. And the issues would be like, one issue was mainly about like Miami bass, and there was a little punch out. There was always a little craft. There was like a bass Jeep with the big subwoofers in the back that was like put tab A into slot B and all that. I remember I had it on my, it was a great magazine, folks. If you can find the old issues of Grand Royal, but they had one. Yes, and they had one not about Alexander Hamilton, but about Aaron Burr, and I think they called it True American. I don't want to lose our monetization. So, but the point is, Aaron Burr, I think, is now Hamilton has his. Let's get the Aaron Burr play out there too.
That's right.
Yeah. How do we transition from Aaron Burr to Kene Nwangwu?
As long as we get Trippy Red on the soundtrack, it's fine. I was just thinking of Bubby Brister mumble rap, and I was like, oh, yeah, it sounded like Trippy Red. You gonna die. All right. Amir Abdullah's been sneaky, Bloom.
Yeah.
But he's the Boone role. Amir Abdullah, whatever is whatever. You brought up Nwangu. Let's any love for these guys before we move on?
Well, Nwangu has special teams contributions and incredible straight line speed. Maybe just has to learn more of the position. And I think that's what's fascinating. They have a type. He, as Matt Waldman brought up, always Matt Waldman, he has had a ruptured Achilles. So as Marlon Mack shows up 100%, according to reports at training camp, as we wonder what's going to happen with Cam Akers and his Achilles.
Is it really 100%?
Well, that's what we're going to watch, right? Preseason watch list. But we'll watch Nwangwu, who's already come back from his Achilles injury. And then Abdullah, who's just a good jack of all trades, can help out on special teams, can help out as a receiver in a pinch. can be a runner, even though he hasn't lived up to his second round draft capital.
And watch where Royce Freeman goes. Okay, there was a listener, and God bless you. I didn't get back to you on Twitter, and I apologize because he's hit me up a couple different times. But again, I don't spend a lot of time on this thing anyway. Any sort of team, where it's the Dolphins, the Rams, the Vikings, Royce Freeman might be available. Melvin Gordon is not. Royce might be. And if you said they have a type, Bloom, the type is Royce Freeman. He just has confidence. Justin Jefferson has confidence coming out his pores. Do you see that old, I think it was Good Morning Football? And they put together a hell of a show. I know they've tried for years and years on our friends at NFL Network, but they put together a hell of a show with Good Morning Football. But it was it was just after the draft with Aaron Rodgers. He's like, yeah, they got that guy from LSU. He's really good. I thought they might move up and take him. And yeah, Justin Jefferson is really good. And we're always pushing against the narrative, Bloom, or the groupthink of, well, he did that as a rookie and he can't do it again. Doesn't this remind you of the conversation we had after Odell Beckham Jr.'s rookie year?
Right.
It's the same thing to me. It's like, wait a second, he can do more.
Right. So this is the constant outlier debate, right? If someone, especially with their first data point, like Jefferson was last year, first year, if that first data point is a massive outlier, does that mean that it was an outlier that will be corrected and regress to the mean? Or is it a sign of something very special happening? This is like Kyle Pitts going fourth in the draft and first non-quarterback. What is it a precursor for? Well, based on the reports out of Minnesota this year, I'd say it's a precursor for something very special happening. And Cecil, you mentioned Odell Beckham. DK Metcalf really impressed us a lot in his rookie year. And then he came out in his second year and said, you thought that was all I had. Oh, I'm just getting started. And the way that Justin Jefferson's playing, that sure seems like what we're going to get in year two. Remember, he was barely part of the offense for the first 3 weeks of the year. So you look at his numbers last year, which were just astronomical for a rookie. Rarefied air, truly rarefied air. But Justin Jefferson can get better. And if you take Justin Jefferson in the second round, I'm not going to say that's a bad pick or you reach for him. If you take him ahead of Devontae Adams or whoever, because he can be that good. He can start to dominate targets on that kind of level and produce big plays. And for the Vikings, so we can go back to the draft and experience it in real time. And the Eagles took Jalen Reagor, and everyone thought, oh, man, it should have been Justin Jefferson. Then Jefferson was having a rough summer last year. It wasn't even the number 2 wide receiver to open the season. And, yeah, our instincts were right. If Jefferson was an Eagle, things would be a little bit different right now.
Things would be a little bit different. But the same with Adam Thielen. I feel like this is Kirk Cousins, Dalvin Cook all over again, where it's like, well, we know what he can do,
right?
And it's pretty good.
Score a lot of touchdowns. He gets open in the red zone. Cousins knows who butters his bread there. And still, we can get him a 5th, 6th round pick. I mean, the difficulty with Thielen is he's obviously not a player on the upslope side of his career. And you could see some erosion. You could see some decline based on where he's at in his 30s. So if you're looking at Godwin's ADP, you're looking at him as somebody. Are you take him over Chris Godwin? You gonna take him over DJ Moore, Jamar Chase, even T. Higgins, Deontay Johnson? These are all players on the upslope side of their career. Like we talked about with Justin Jefferson, things can get better. So that's my one hesitation with targeting Thielen. But you know what you're going to get, and sometimes that's good enough.
Behind the big two of Jefferson and Thielen, well, how about something new, Bloom? D.D. Westbrook there with that speed. Can he himself come back from his own injury situation? B.C. Johnson, who I got a lot of love for, CSU, what's up? CSU represent, as Chris would say if he was in the chat room. And I think it was during the draft. Was it Emir Smith-Marset? The name that I super hacked, and then someone on Twitter was like, that's disrespectful. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I hack people's names. And I think NFL.com had his name cut off or something. Either way, Emir Smith-Marset is there as well. Let's talk about these other guys.
There's a battle for the number 3 wide receiver job. It's wide open. Not necessarily a good thing for the Vikings. It matters for fantasy football, maybe if one of the top 2 goes down. But we can save some of that discussion for the tight ends. Westbrook has to be considered the favorite. They bring him in, coming back from an ACL tear, didn't do anything last year, but we know that he game. We know he's got some suddenness, some speed. And based on his combination of experience and talent, he has to be the favorite for that job. And something went wrong if he doesn't win that job. They got B.C. Johnson. He's more of that wide receiver 5, kind of a utility wide receiver. They also have Chad Beebe, by the way, in a similar role. And then there's Smith Marset, who is a rookie, 5th-round rookie, speed. So he can add that to the offense. I'm not sure what else he can add at this point, but some depth chart spots, some roster spots up for grabs in this group.
Well, our guy, Joe King, you're going to be very happy now because it's time for tight end talk. And that means, Irv Smith, it's all you, man. It's all you. We will get to little Zach Davidson love as the chat room's talking about him as well.
He can punt.
Kylan Granson or Zach Davidson. Anyway, Irv Smith, gold or fool's gold?
Probably fool's gold, but I can't really be that harsh whenever you're still only spending a 10th, 11th, 12th round pick on him. I do think that we can look to what happened after Kyle Rudolph went out last year. And Conklin and Smith were in the same vicinity in terms of targets and production. Now, Smith had more touchdowns, but I think that's by design. I think that's the Vikings offense. And Tyler Conklin is a good player. Tyler Conklin is one of those receiving specialist tight ends. They like Tyler Conklin. This is a 2 tight end offense. That's what we're going to see. So I think that the gap between Smith and Conklin is probably smaller than folks are factoring in. I think even if Conklin were to get hurt, I don't expect that Smith would then start to hog the targets in a Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett kind of way. However, if one of Thielen or Jefferson goes down, now could Smith become the number 2 target on the team? Possibly. So there's some upside there. But in that part of the draft, I'm looking at Blake Jarwin still as my guy. Other people are looking at Adam Troutman. The point is you have one bullet, basically, as the upside number 2 tight end. Or maybe if you don't take any of the top 10 tight ends, you have 2. I just don't know if Irv Smith's upside is as compelling, even though he's very young, and he's very much on the upslope side of his career. So I won't be shocked if he does end up being one of the breakout tight ends. But structurally, based on the offense, and Tyler Conklin. And let's not forget Tyler Conklin for like deep tight end premium leagues. He may even end up being somebody that we talk about in DFS, depending on matchups. I think he's an underrated player that people will learn as the season goes on.
He may be somebody I talk about with prop bets.
Yeah.
What? Oh, hey, everybody. Gambling's illegal at Bushwood, sir, and I never slice. Is Zach Davidson a slice?
Well, he's got some upside physically.
He's freaking huge.
Yeah, and talented athletically, and he can punt. He can save them a roster spot as an emergency punter. So, no, I think he's exactly the kind of fun player that we want to watch in the preseason watch list to see. Coming from a small school, does he fit in? Is the game too big for him? Or is he accelerating very quickly in his development and someone that can be part of this 2 tight end offense in the future?
Bloom, it feels great to unleash and unveil 2021 fantasy football preseason watch list, brother. Always good to loosen up the pipes, stretch out, and kind of take this yearly trip around it. Did we do this the first year? I think it was because we did the beat writer tour, we did preseason watch list, so this is our 16th season of the Audible.
It's great, Cecil, because I feel like it's one of those tours, and we're just going through all the great sights we're going to see this season. We're going to see how these things resolve. We don't know how they're all going to resolve, but we love the big reveal together and occasionally being right and patting ourselves on the back.
Breaking my arm, patting myself on the back. And then going to Broncos training camp every day. Scheduling note for you, Bloom, and for the viewing and listening audience. We'll get these as soon as, because with preseason watch list, so many things change, and I hate if we have an episode done and then it's not out on Spotify yet until the next day, and then somebody gets hurt or whatever. So everything's moving quickly in the preseason. Thank you all very much for watching. Check out footballguys.com, subscribe, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. But it will be, because I'll be at training camp till noon, so get home about 2. It'll be 2 Mountain, so 4 Eastern, the days we can do this. And we will get through all the divisions and, of course, those 32 teams, 32 episodes, every skill position player that you want to know about. Chat room, what's up? If you do all those YouTube things, like my friend Sasha says, like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that you never miss a vid. He's Sigmund Bloom. I'm Cecil Lammey. Follow us on Twitter because it's the most important thing ever. Follow the show at The Audible, at Sigmund Bloom, at Cecil Lammey. Everyone, good to be back. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, stay tuned and stay frosty.